Let's talk about the Thor franchise. Most people hated or didn't care for Thor until Thor Ragnarok. To those peoples, I'd like to say, Thor movies have only gotten worse because of you people. Thor is probably the most unrelatable Avenger.
How's space?
Space is fine.
However, it's kind of the point. I'm tired of people marketing movies to an audience that really doesn't give a shit either way what happens to the character or have any investment. I understand these movies are supposed to be family friendly, but that doesn't mean you should kill the character completely or change him into something that he isn't so that more people will enjoy him. It's disingenuous to the original creators and the character himself. So, let's talk about who Thor is. Thor is a god. Yep, that about sums it up actually. However, that's really important to the character. You have to think, what would a Norse ancient warrior god do in these situations? Would he make a joke or kill everyone? The general consensus of the Thor franchise seems to be that Thor Ragnarok is the most favored, and then Thor 1 and Thor 2 fall very far behind, which I think is a shame, because I think they're both significant films and stand out on their own. So in this video, we're going to talk about all three Thor movies. First, we're going to go backwards, though, from your favorite Thor Ragnarok to Thor the Dark World to Thor 1, in order from worst to best. All right, let's talk about Thor Ragnarok. First 10 minutes of this movie were dope. You got Mr. Krabs as Surtur freaking chaining down Thor in Muspelheim with the freaking fire dragon, and Thor's just going AWOL on these Norse dragars and dragons and freaking fire demons. It was awesome. And then the rest of the movie happened, and I didn't enjoy a single second of it. Problem one is Thor is not in this film.
Oh, what?
You got Chris Hemsworth phoning it in as Thor.
You're just the worst.
But Thor's not actually in there. The things he says and does, the vernacular he uses, and the kind of personality he has is more akin to a Californian than it is a Norse god. That same thing happened to Heimdall, too, by the way. He had this cool, deep-ass voice like...
Tell me, Loki, how did you get the Jotuns into Asgard?
And now he's all like...
Sorry about that. These bloody things are everywhere.
Hello, mate. Let's go. I understand changing a concept or narrative style to make it more accessible to people, but Thor Ragnarok shouldn't have been a comedy. Ragnarok in the comics is a very dark time. It's the end of Asgard, and why they copied the gist of it, they really didn't capture the consequences that it has. They just put everyone on a boat and they're like, it's okay. I don't know who decided to make Ragnarok a comedy. That's kind of making, like, Titanic a comedy. Ragnarok is the end of Asgard. All kind of shit goes wrong. Thor goes blind. His brother Tyr dies. He frickin' chops off Loki's head. Frickin' Odin's dead. He has to basically hang himself from a tree and then break the tapestry of time that basically destroys all of Asgard and all the gods.
Hello.
Hi.
Thor wasn't the only character that was reworked. Valkyrie and Korg were both very stoic and serious characters in the comics that were recreated for comedic purposes. In most places, I actually don't find the comedic time inappropriate, specifically with Valkyrie. An alcoholic with PTSD is not something I'd want my kid watching. Also, it's not funny. She has a really sad situation and they just keep making jokes about it.
Just because we're gonna die, so drinks.
Most Marvel movies don't have dramatic moments or character building, but this film is the worst about it. Every time there's about to be an emotional moment or something that really builds these characters, it's over before it starts.
Yeah. It's probably for the best that we never see each other again. Hey, let's do get help.
Why? That would have been a perfect way to end a scene. Why did you have to do that? Loki is rated as one of the Marvel's best villains currently, and that's really sad for a multitude of reasons. But the point is that he has overstayed his welcome. In this film, he adds absolutely nothing. He is not useful, he is not important, and he's not even interesting or engaging. There's so much I could say about the lack of interest in this character or how disappointing he is, but I think there's one person that could do it slightly better than me.
Dear brother, becoming predictable. I trust you. You betray me round and round in circles we go. See, Loki, life is about growth. It's about change. But you seem to just want to stay the same. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you'll always be the god of mischief, but you could be more.
What's also really annoying about the character is he's not even good at magic. Doctor Strange whooped his ass, teleported him in 3 different dimensions before he could even get out his knives. Also, got his ass kicked by Valkyrie. He hasn't used magic since Thor 1. What are his powers? He's super powerful in the comics. Why doesn't he do anything? By the way, if you had an electronic taser that was powerful enough to detain a god, why wouldn't you use that on Hela? That's problem 1. Problem 2, how does that work on the god of thunder? That's like shooting the Human Torch with a flamethrower. If you want to hear me talk more shit about Thor Ragnarok, I actually have a podcast called Source to Screen Podcast. You can follow on Google Play and also iTunes. Okay, y'all need to stop hating on Thor the Dark World. What do you remember about Thor the Dark World? The lame villain, the weird costume design, or the fact that the ending was the exact same as the Avengers? If you notice anything, most of these things are at the end of the movie. The film still has a lot to offer, with great performances, a stellar soundtrack, and a twist ending that left me breathless. Honestly, my favorite thing about Thor the Dark World is the way it expands on the mythos and legends. I love going to Svartalfheim and Jotunheim and Anaheim. Wait, no. I don't think it's called it's Vanaheim. I like stepping into these other worlds and seeing these great legendary battles between Asgardians and Dark Elves. It's just something that really interests me and I think really builds on the character. It really shows where Thor comes from, which I actually really enjoyed. This probably has the most Asgard out of the 3 Thor films. In terms of the plot, I think the creators made a big mistake by focusing on the convergence as opposed to Thor's homeworld. I think the Dark World should have really focused on Svartalfheim and the feud between the Dark Elves and Asgardians. I think there was a lot more interesting, and also the drama that came out of this war had real consequences.
I believe you.
I really liked seeing the casualties of war. It built more depth and actually is more akin to the Ragnarok comics than the movie Ragnarok in terms of tone. Since I brought up Ragnarok, let's talk about that twist ending. I was so excited to see what Loki was going to do in Ragnarok. The twist ending of him freaking surpassing Odin. My mind was blown. I was so excited. And I think they ruined that too in Ragnarok.
All right, I yield!
If you look at the original title card or some of the concept art for Thor Ragnarok, originally, I think the tone was going to be a lot darker, and I think would have made Loki's plan seem way more sinister. But I guess we'll never see that. Now, while Thor the Dark World isn't as good as the first one, I do believe it brings a lot to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and is enjoyable on its own. Alright, and finally, Thor. Just Thor. First, let's talk about what a risk this movie was and how amazing it was they got half the talent they did. What an interesting cast. You have Natalie Portman, Anthony Hopkins, you got Idris Elba, and then you have a nobody at the time, Chris Hemsworth. Every actor brought something into this film, whether it was their comedic timing or their dramatic presence. And while all the acting talent was amazing, you have an amazing Shakespearean director who I think was the perfect choice for this film, Kenneth Branagh, who is not related to Eric Bana, who plays the Hulk in the Ang Lee film. Even though he uses more Dutch angles than the Dutch, it's important to know why he was selected as a director. I believe he was picked because he has a true understanding of dramatic presence. He understands when to slow down, when to have jokes, but more importantly, to create a serious tone and tell a story that is faithful to the character.
You are unworthy of these realms, unworthy of your title! You're unworthy of the loved ones you have betrayed.
What most people don't realize is everything they love about Loki in the other films was all grounded and rooted right here in the first Thor. This is the first villain that you actually relate to, can understand, and more importantly, secretly root for. Let's take a look at Loki's story arc. Initially, he's just being the god of mischief, spoiling Thor's big day, but then upon understanding his true heritage, realizes a much darker part of himself. He realizes that he was just a bargaining chip from Odin. And then here's where it gets really weird.
Tell me!
Loki decides to plan a fake assassination attempt with his real birthright father, Laufey, against his adopted father, Odin, but then at the last second betrays his real father and kills him to impress his stepfather.
And your death came by the son of Odin.
God damn, that is messed up. This dramatic story is more akin to the gods they revolve around than any of the other Thor movies. It makes sense to have a power struggle between gods and to root this in family matters.
It's a rare condition this day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page.
The film also has great comedy. It's not the same as Ragnarok's comedy, but I think it's better timed, and also, I think it fits the characters more often.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another! I need a horse!
We don't have horses, just dogs, cats, birds.
And give me one of those large enough to ride.
I like the fish out of water version of Thor, personally. I also am a big fan of the origin. I think it's pretty faithful to the character Thor and his personality. I like Thor as a bloodthirsty warrior who then learns nobility through Midgard. Thor's development in the film is really rewarding.
I am truly sorry, but these people are innocent. Taking their lives will gain you nothing. So take mine and end this.
They knocked that out of the park. I also enjoy how faithful it was to the source material. It didn't change anything for creative purposes or so that the audience would understand it. It just told the story, and if you didn't get it, too bad. I've heard on multiple occasions people say they don't enjoy Thor while he's on Asgard. They only find it interesting when he's on Earth. To that I say, maybe Thor's not for you. Thor is a Norse god. He spends most of his times in the Nine Realms. One of those is Earth, but it shouldn't be the priority. It's not his home setting. I think what's also really impressive about the film is that it does tether it to Earth and the MCU. You're tying a Norse god to characters like Captain America and Iron Man, very grounded characters in comparison. And more importantly, it does it well. As opposed to the future films, I believe Thor was a very inspired film. Through its director, acting, set designer, and costumes, you really get set to another planet, another realm that really just takes you away to something else, something very dramatic, something off-world, but it's something original and something new. I think the other films miss that a little bit. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I really appreciate the support. Please comment below so we can continue the discussion in the comments. Also, if you have any other videos of mine you'd like to watch, I'll list them right here. Hit the subscribe button or don't because it's a free country.